Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are live. We are live. We got 2/3 of the tripod here. We got the Madman here, nice and crisp from yesterday's game. Madman, good morning. How are you doing?
Doing well, Coach. Great to see you as always. Yeah, no, thanks for the reference to the crisp. I mean, me and some buddies were on the 50, for this game. Really great seats, but man, we were facing the sun side, and just got home, and oh my God, we knew it. We knew it right then and there. We said, look, man, we're gonna eat this thing. I said, I'm gonna turn into a chicken kubi day by halftime here, and that's what happened. Little chicken kubi day, some barg, some overcooked steak, but always such a pleasure to talk with you, Coach. I'm sure we're gonna get deep, raw, emotional, unorthodox, but wouldn't rather do this with anybody but you, my friend. And hopefully, wish it was under better circumstances, but here we are.
Yeah, so as we know, Trojans is 30-33. I've stated my opinions yesterday. I'm just going to hand it over to you. Where do you stand? How do you feel? And to start off, you were right. We're going to be friends in Seinfeld for the next 6 weeks. So
Well,
go ahead.
Well, Coach. I thought you did a great job engaging the fans yesterday. I caught a little bit of it. It was very challenging to get out of the stadium as well. I'll tell you, it was because it was an overtime game. So many people stayed till the end. That was perhaps in 20 years, Coach, the longest it took me to get out of the Coliseum. I don't know if I, just caught the wrong time or what. It took us an hour and a half to get back on the tent. It was really unbelievable. But Coach, look, I mean, I'm going to break this down kind of holistically, group by group here. I mean, let's start with the offense. Obviously, it was a tale of two halves. But Coach, what I will say is the moment Penn State played with gap integrity, the game was over. And when you look at the first half, even when SC got the 20 points in the first half, 4 scoring drives, you got to understand the circumstances under which those scoring drives came about. I thought Lincoln Riley actually did a really great job play calling. We talked about it so much all week in the first half. How is he going to manufacture, synthetically create opportunities for this offensive line to be able to absorb that pass rush? And we said, is it going to be 12 personnel? Is it going to be, substitutions? Is it going to be play calling? Well, guess what, Coach? The answer to the question was really play calling. He really leveraged misdirection in the first half of that game to get Penn State to lose gap integrity, really taking advantage of the lack of gap integrity that Penn State showed. They were way too upfield on their edges. They were all trying to make the spectacular play. I think Lincoln saw that very clearly after the first drive. And obviously, you look at those 4 scoring drives. The first one was just a beautiful fake reverse joiner off a branch. But again, that was misdirection, touchdown. You look at that second touchdown drive, Coach, if you recall, that Woody Marks, it was going to be a flea flicker back to Moss, right? It was a misdirection. They overcommitted, and it actually created a running lane for Moss to go 21 yards. And then he went tempo right away. And that very next play, the Penn State pass rush was a little tentative because they knew they had overcommit the play before. And then on the final field goal before the half, again, leveraging the lack of gap integrity with Penn State with that little screen pass to Woody Marks just off to the side for 33 yards to set up the field goal. And then the fourth field goal was obviously just the result of, a great Stevens interception in the return, and they just kicked the field goal from there. So even when you looked at it, Coach, at halftime, we all kind of sat there and said, up 20-6, but really leveraging a lot of misdirection. I wonder how this game is going to change if and when Penn State plays with gap integrity. And lo and behold, you saw Penn State with a much more controlled pass rush. They were much more disciplined defensively. And my God, Coach, offensively, SC couldn't do a thing in the second half. I mean, outside of that 1 3rd and 6 throw on that final drive to make it 30-23 to Deuce Robinson, I mean, there was really not a single explosive play in that second half or overtime. So clearly you saw when it became kind of hat on hat, and, there was no sort of gimmick in terms of both, a lack of gap integrity and a misdirection outside of that. You're just kind of playing straight up mano a mano. Who's better? The game went 27-10 to Penn State. So, tough to see that from an offensive perspective, where there was just such a gaping drop off as the result of really Penn State doing things wrong versus USC really doing things right. On the defensive side, Coach, and we talked about this a ton. I mean, this team just cannot get a stop when they need to. And I know you're the defensive expert here, but I'm going to give you a stat here, Coach, and we saw it, and we talked about this as one of our pregame matchup. Tyler Warren, right? We said he's their Swiss Army knife. He's their Taysom Hill. He's their Tebow if he was a tight end. Coach, he comes into the game, 23 catches, 289 yards, 3 touchdowns receiving. He had 17 catches for 224 yards and a touchdown. He doubled his stats for the season in one game, Coach. And you know what this game reminded me of? For all the talk about the evolution of the defense, this was 2022 Utah 2.0. Remember that game, Coach? You know, midseason, it was right around this. It was game 7. USC comes in 6-0. Remember, that was that, electric 43-42 finish. What was Dalton Kincaid's line that night? You remember Dalton Kincaid? And remember, you said, hey, man, USC just turned Dalton Kincaid into a first-round pick that night. Remember, he had 17 catches for 234 yards and a touchdown. It was eerily the same stat line. And the thing that was so baffling, Coach, is he was so open on probably 75% of those targets. It was unbelievable because he was their exclusive weapon. And so to see that, and then to see a situation, Coach, where on that last drive with Penn State, when you needed it, when you had to have it, 4th and 7, that was a heck of a catch that Clifford made on 4th and 7. But then the second 4th down, to once again kind of come up with the goods and then ultimately score that touchdown, they just could not get a stop when this team needed to. And ultimately, again, no sacks, only 1 tackle for loss. Just an inability to make Drew Aller uncomfortable. He had a couple of poor throws when he was trying to throw to anybody but Warren, which we sort of saw coming in our pregame show. But ultimately, Coach, a defense that couldn't get a stop when you needed to. And yet again, this is now the 3rd consecutive game. And from a loss perspective, this team just wilted in the second half. They just wilted, defensively, from a strength perspective, a conditioning perspective, and just faded away into the night, Coach. And then the third element here is the game management, right? I mean, what was Lincoln Riley thinking on that last drive? Because despite all of these things, the game was still on USC's racket, tied at 30. You're past, you get the ball with 2 minutes, 53 seconds to go. You're past midfield with a minute and a half. Okay,
4 timeouts.
Past midfield with a minute and a half, all your timeouts. I think they had 2, maybe even 3. They had 2 timeouts. And, all you have to go is go 20 more yards. And you've got the game won. And it was just inexplicably, he was letting the clock run. Coach James Franklin was the one who called the timeout on the 3rd down. And everybody in the stadium was like, what's Franklin doing? It was one of those situations where it's like, do they both want to lose this game? Like, what is going on right now? And the fact that Riley, I thought he got so conservative, Coach, on that last series. I don't really understand it, because look, take your shots. Even if you're going to miss there, here's the thing. Even if you got a punt with 30 seconds to go, pin Penn State inside the 15, inside the 10. Look, Aller has already thrown at that point in the game 2 interceptions. He's been tough in the middle of the field. The crowd's going to get on him. They're probably going to take a knee or run the ball. They'll probably run one play, see what they can get. And then if they don't get anything, they'll probably take a knee and you're going into overtime. There was really no downside there. And Coach, that was also systematic of Riley's play calling earlier in the game. 3 moments where SC could have put this game away to bed. Up 14-3 after the Stevens pick. Your first down at the Penn State 24-23 yard line, got nothing on that drive. Had to settle for the field goal. Then got the ball back after a punt, up 17-13, went 3 and out. Up 17-3, went 3 and out. And then up 17-6 right before the half, had to settle for that field goal. 3 chances, Coach, to go up 3 scores. And when they couldn't quite go up 3 scores, and it was still a 2-score game, and you knew they were leveraging misdirection, I knew right then Penn State was going to be able to come back in this game, and this was still going to be a close game. And so, Coach, where we go from here, and I'll hand it back over to you, all of the goodwill that was achieved from the 2 performances in succession, right? When you look at the Holiday Bowl victory last December, and we said, look, this is now the building block for 2024. And then the LSU win, right, where we thought, oh, my God, where is this team headed? All of the goodwill that was accrued from those two games now, Coach, is gone. We are now at the state of the program where we were right after the Victory Bell game, right before the Holiday Bowl, of where is this team going? And, Coach, I'll say one thing. The Lincoln Riley clock has officially begun. I've always said he gets 4 years. I still believe that. But now guess what? He's entering his fourth year today, this morning, because year 3 is over, right? We are eliminated from any sort of meaningful game. It doesn't matter what this team does from here on out. They can win 7 straight meaningless games. This season is still going to be a disappointment. This is a $10 million a year coach that now is 11-10 in his last 21 games, Coach. And for all the talk that he's given, oh, we're 2 plays away from being 5-0. We're 3 plays away from being 6-0. Guess what, Coach? This team is also 2 plays away from being 1-5. If Nussmeier makes the right read on that last drive in LSU inside 2 minutes, go check the tape inside that red zone. He hands it off to Emery instead of keeps it for the throw. LSU's up 24-20 in that game. And all the evidence later on in this season suggests we wouldn't have been able to come back from that. And if the Wisconsin guy doesn't fumble up 21-10, they probably lose that game too. So that this 2 plays from here and 3 plays from here, all of that is sort of meaningless. Now we get into a situation here, Coach, where this is now 6 preseason games for 2025. His year 4 starts now. And now if he cannot make the playoff in year 4, this is a vastly overpaid coach that we need to move on from.
Well, man, thank you for that. So, a couple of points I want to make. And I agree with everything you said. I agree with every last thing that you said. I think the check and the thumb is coming. When is it coming? I don't know. I don't think anything's going to change from Lincoln Riley. This is 3 years of the same. You get what I'm saying? Like, this is legit 3 years of the same season that we're seeing. We're not seeing any change. Nothing has changed at all. Not one thing has changed since he first got here to what's happening now. So I took a hard look at it during the game yesterday because I was watching the game and I said, at one point during the game, I was like, this is the same team. This is the same results. Nothing's changed. So I looked during the game. Not one person we played. No, I'm sorry. I can't say not one person because 44 may be first team all Big Ten. He may have that ability. Not one person other than that is going to be first team all Big Ten.
Yep.
Not one person we play is going to be an All-American. But they all show up against us. Those running backs from Minnesota won't have another game like that.
Coach, Minnesota had 41 yards rushing against UCLA last night. Okay,
that's what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying? You get where I'm coming from? Like, and they had 200 yards against us. Now, here, let's cut deeper. I don't think Danton Lynn, I don't think he's the guy. I think we got fooled. When you really look at it, you take a really hard look, we gave up 2. Here's the thing. Nussmeier had 500 yards passing when he came in to play us. He threw for 400, and now he's at 1,100 yards. He wasn't even at 1,000 yards until last night. Like, let's look at it. We make these guys glorified dudes when they come and play us. At the end of the day, it's the same thing. How long are we going to deal with the same thing? I think, and Matt, man, I'm going to admit it. I'm going to admit it to you. 100%. I've been powdering butts for too long. And yesterday was a wake-up call. Yesterday was a legit wake-up call, and the coaching's not good enough. It's not. How do you have guys wide open? How does a running back walk into the end zone with just wide open in the flats? You're in a too-high shield. Why are guys open in the hole the whole time? There's a lot of flaws on this defense. Running backs are running for 200 yards. Not that good. Schematically, it's not that good. I'm calling for his head. I'm ready for change. I know the change won't happen now. I know the change, it takes a lot to go through it. You got to raise the money and all this has to happen. But when you really peel back the onion and not look at the skin and you have to legit cry, nothing's changed on defense. Nothing's changed offensively. We've been blinded. Now the lights are turned off and we're seeing the truth. This is not a good staff, man. This is not a good staff. We're not going anywhere. We haven't improved. We are the same team we have been the past 2 years. We're not good enough.
Yeah, no, Coach. It's a great point there, and I'll just say, Coach, just as a caveat, Nussmeier had a phenomenal game against us. It wasn't quite 500. He was a little north of 300, but to your point, I mean, he was 29 for 38, right? I mean, so he could kind of get whatever he wanted. So I think you were spot on there. Coach, here's the thing about the defense, and I think it's the thing that you're seeing, and I think the two of us are seeing that perhaps a lot of the other media isn't seeing. I think folks are just kind of going straight to points per game this year versus last year. They're going yards per game this year versus last year. And then you're just saying, oh my God. And then they're just looking at the total ranking. Last year they were 112th. This year they're 32nd. That'll drop after this game. They're probably 40th, 42nd, something like that. And saying, my God, this defense is so much better. Now, all of those statistics are true. But like we talked about earlier in the week, Coach, you have to take pace of play into account. In the Pac-12 pace of play is a much faster pace of play. It's more possessions. It's a more wide open game. Big 12, where Lincoln came from, much more wide open game, lot more possessions, lot more space. The Big 10 is fewer possessions. It's more congested. They call the game more physical. And so it favors the defense inherently in that way. It's kind of like back in the 80s or 90s. I mean, were you playing the bad boy Pistons or were you playing the Showtime Lakers, right? I mean, if you play the Showtime Lakers, the game's going to be in the 130s. You play the bad boy Pistons, the game's going to be in the 90s and you're going to have a broken jaw by the end of the night, right? I mean, that's the difference between the Big 10 and some of these other conferences. And, Coach, if you kind of just take a step back, last year this team gave up about 34 points a game, right? We knew, historically bad defense. This year, if you take out the Utah State shutout and just say, okay, let's just look at this team against Power 5 competition, they're giving up 25 a game, which is not that much better than 34 a game when you take into consideration the slower pace of play. If you apply this 25 to a Pac-12 or a Big 10, it's probably 30. So is this defense better? Are they lining up better? Are they a little bit more disciplined? Are they a little bit more sound in terms of tackling? Yes, he's improved them in that way, but it's very incremental improvement. This is not some radical transformation of the defense. It's just been sort of the byproduct of playing with slower pace of play. And the one thing, Coach, that's really being revealed right now in the D'Anton Lynn system, you got to remember, and we talked about this earlier in the year, he needs that queen piece on the chessboard that can get a pass rush from anywhere on the field, and then he goes disguise on the weak side off of that. And he can do a lot of different things in terms of shells, a lot of things with the backer, show blitz, drop back, disguise blitzes with the corner, and always feels like, Coach, to your point, that you got sort of +1. But the reason that you have +1 on the weak side is you have that pass rusher. He had that in Latu last year. Latu's top 15 pick, Coach. Latu's going to be a Pro Bowler in the NFL.
Yeah, I was about to say he's balling in the NFL.
He's balling, man. The guy had a top 15 pick in Leatu Latu. There is nobody on this defense that's a Leatu Latu right now. Coach, this team has 6 sacks on the season. Eric Gentry leads this team with sacks with 2, and Gentry hasn't played the last 2 games. The inability for one guy, we're sort of been waiting for Anthony Lucas potentially to be that guy because he's got the physical tools and the gifts. It just he hasn't broken through yet. But without having that singular force, Coach, to be that pass rusher, none of the Lynn disguises are working because you have to disguise off of something. That is the fundamental challenge right now. And I know you'll get much deeper in it with the X's and O's, but until you can get that alpha pass rusher, Coach, on one side of the field, you're going to have a hard time with this Lynn defense, and that's what we're seeing here, Coach. I mean, it's unbelievable. 3 games, all 3 games, this team had the lead in the fourth quarter, and they put the game in the hand of their defense, and all 3 games, this defense let them down. Coach, the craziest stat of all last night, Penn State led for 15 seconds in the game, Coach, and won. USC led for 59 minutes and 45 seconds. Look, when was the only time Penn State led, right? At 3-0. And then what happened? The very first play was the Joyner run. And that's it. SC led all the way. And then it was tied. And then in timeless overtime is when Penn State got the game-winning kick. So it just is, this is a heartbreaker. But, whether you look at it from an offensive perspective, a defensive perspective, or a game management perspective, there's just mediocrity all over the field right now, Coach. And, that's the challenge, that you just don't have much to hang your hat on at this point. And I think Lincoln's got a very interesting decision here, Coach. What does he do with these next 6 games? Because to our point, this is still a very senior-laden team, particularly on defense. So where does this go? Like, for instance, what does Gentry do right now, Coach? Like, if you're Gentry, you can redshirt. You're eligible to redshirt. Do you feel like you've shown enough on film to warrant being an NFL draft pick and in a position that you feel comfortable with? Or do you come back and if so, you just play it out and then go pro? And if you don't feel that way, it makes all the sense in the world to redshirt, because you're going to be playing in meaningless games the rest of the way. And so Gentry's case is a little bit extreme, but all of these guys are going to have to make decisions. I mean, Coach, when you talk about Jameel Muhammad, you talk about Nate Clifton, you talk about Gavin Meyer, you talk about Mascarenas Arnold, you talk about Cobb, you talk about Greedy Vance Jr., you talk about Covington, you talk about Jalen Smith. All of these guys, Coach, are seniors. And so, are you going to bench them all and just play the young guys and get ready for the preseason? Probably not yet. But how do you sort of manage this now? Because this is now a glorified 6-game preseason for 2025. So it's going to be fascinating to see what Lincoln does there. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Woody Marks is a senior. John Monheim is a senior. Pregnon is a senior. Your 2 best linemen are seniors. So how are you going to sort of manage this now moving forward? It's going to be fascinating. But, Coach, here, I'll say one thing. And everyone goes crazy here. I mean, Helton had a better record at this stage, than Lincoln does. Through 33 games, Helton was 1 game better. And through 33 games, Helton had a Rose Bowl and a conference championship. Now, granted, it all fell off after that. But the other comp, Coach, I'll give you is Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin went 28-15 as head coach of USC and wasn't even afforded a ride back to the airport. I mean, back to the terminal. And he had to deal with sanctions, a reduced scholarship, and a much lesser salary. Lincoln Riley has $10 million a year, has NIL, has the transfer portal, all sort of, aligned finally, and he's 22-11. And so, we're at a position here where I'm not ready to just pull the plug yet on Riley. I've always believed you get 4 years to sort of prove yourself. But guess what, Coach? Year 4 starts now. There's no more clock. There's no more concessions. There's no more to blame, right, Coach? The whole story, these first 33 games of Lincoln Riley's tenure, has always been everybody but Lincoln Riley, right, Coach? It's been the defense. It's been NIL. It's been the trenches. It's been officiating. It's been we've blamed everything but Lincoln Riley. Ultimately, he's the top guy. He's making the big bucks. And now this is it. His clock begins from now until next December, Coach. This is now the window. And if he cannot get this team to the playoff next year, Lincoln Riley should not be the coach in 2026.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're really close to the thumb in the check. We're really close to the thumb in the check. And so it's interesting though, because last week after the Minnesota game, when I was like, this is on the defense, and everybody was like, oh, what are you talking about? We needed 2 stops. We didn't get 2 stops. When are we? And then here's the thing that bothers me too. And the mainstream media is so bad at it. And then people who don't understand the core of the sport go along with the mainstream media. You drive 85 yards twice. You drive on the defense 85 yards twice. And then kick a field goal. Oh, we got to stop. Good job. That's not the job of the defense. That's not the job of the defense. The job of the defense, when you get them on the 25, is to give them the punt from the 25, so you flip the field. You don't let them drive 85 yards and then let them kick a field goal, and then you're happy. Now we got the ball on our 25, and we have to drive 85 yards. That's not a stop. That's a moral victory.
Right.
It's not a good job because guess what? The defense on the defensive sideline is clapping hands, and the offensive sideline is clapping hands. Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. I'm not.
No worries.
And then the offense on the side, they're sitting up there clapping hands too. What's up, Will the Thrill? The offense on their side are clapping hands too because they got points out of it. They drove 85 yards twice.
Yep.
It's not good enough. We needed a stop last week twice. And we didn't get it. You get what I'm saying?
Coach.
Like,
it's a great point, Coach. And look, this is just a mediocre team. I mean, This is a mediocre team defensively, and Coach is a mediocre team offensively. I mean, when you said it really well defensively, I mean, let's look at the offense. Outside of Woody Marks, I mean, who can you really rely on? Where is Zakaria Branch, Coach? I mean, what is going on here? Yep. I mean, this is now one touchdown over the last 17 games, and he just looks completely lost. To the point where he's just getting completely phased out of the offense. I love my guy, Jacoby Lane. I think there's such a wildly bright future there. But after he got the 10 for 105 against Wisconsin, he just doesn't seem like he's ready to be wide receiver one. And he's really kind of gotten out-muscled and out-physical these last two games. I think Lemon has got a ton of talent. Your guy, he's sort of showing it in flashes, and I don't know if he's not getting the ball enough or it's just one of those things where it's just hard to get on the field with so many guys. Obviously, Deuce had a really nice catch. He made the one big play in the second half there and had another nice catch that was, called back given the holding and the roughing situation, the holding situation, I should say, excuse me. And then you got, Hudson finally kind of got in the end zone this year. But again, Coach, my concern is they don't have a wide receiver one. Remember, I believe very strongly in having a go-to guy. I really believe very strongly in knowing who's your number one and who's your number two. You can pepper it around against the lesser teams. You can pepper it around in the lesser moments. But when you got to have it, you got to know who your guys are. And, this is still a young group that hasn't really emerged. A true wide receiver one hasn't emerged yet. We have not been able to replace Lake McCree as tight end. Eldridge has done some nice things. Walker Lyons did some nice things. But there was a drop-off with McCree, both from a receiving perspective as well as from a blocking perspective. They tried to hold their own. I think they did a pretty decent job, but not having Lake McCree has really limited this offense, Coach, and having Lincoln to sort of rely on a lot of this misdirection and gimmickry, particularly yesterday. So you look at it offensively, you look at it defensively. Special teams was great up until it wasn't, 3 field goals and then missed the kick. But Coach, I'll be honest with you, the moment the game went into overtime, there was a sense the game was over. You could feel the energy in the stadium. They went 3 and out there, and the game felt over when Marks got stuffed for -3 on that second down. When it was sort of
Terrible
3rd and 13, that was the moment. And I know people are kind of talking about, hey, there was some 50-50 balls there with Lemon on that first down throw in overtime with the release, and Lane on the 3rd down. Look, I'm not someone who's ever going to complain about the officiating. It goes both ways. I mean, you could go back and say, was that first touchdown that Penn State got taken off the board on that pick play with Warren really a pick play? It didn't look like it live, I'll be honest with you. So these things go, that was a 4-point penalty right there. So these things go both ways. I'm tired of our fan base whining about the officials so much. We just got to play ball. We know it's going to be tightly called, and we just have to impose a force and a physicality and an intention to be a better football team. But Coach, this is a mediocre team that's played a mediocre schedule. Minnesota's going to be a 7-5, 8-5 team. Michigan's going to be an 8-4, 7-5 team. Obviously Penn State's going to go on and do some great things. You look at the rest of this schedule outside of Notre Dame, Coach, there's not a ranked team on this schedule. I'm
worried about Washington, though.
Washington's going to be a really tough game. And then, I thank God LSU won yesterday is the one thing I'll say. That at least makes that win look better. But at the end of the day, we talked about this week, Coach. I mean, even if this team loses in overtime, loses by 1, loses on a field goal, the playoff chances are over. And there's absolutely, that's the case. This team is unranked. There's just not enough on the schedule left to be able to warrant all of these spots. We're headed to a mid-tier bowl, and this is just sort of a glorified preseason now for 2025.
So yesterday, I don't know if you heard this part, but I had to get on the fans. I told them to stop with the excuses. We have to stop with the excuses. And
Yeah.
I'll give you a really, really good example of stopping with the excuses. I'll give you 2 undefeated teams right now with way lesser talent, balling right now, not giving up a bunch of points. Army, Navy. Why are they so good? Why are nobody's talk? See, and that's the problem with the big networks. They make people, they pump people who they want to pump, right? Nobody's talking about Army, Navy being undefeated and putting up 40 points a game and only giving up 14 a game. Well, lesser talent. These guys aren't that good. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
These coaches are coaching them up. Coach them up. I wish I could have found it. The greatest thing, everybody says, oh, well, SC doesn't have the talent. There's a clip all over the internet. And Mike Tomlin's like, I hate when people say there's a flaw here and a flaw there. That's lazy coaching. I want those guys. I want to coach them up. I want to make them better. We keep talking about the referees. We keep talking about this. We keep talking about that. We keep talking about this. No more excuses. No more excuses. We're just not good enough. And I'm not going to blame the kids because here's the thing. Here's bad coaching, Jamal. I'm going to tell you bad coaching. The game is on the line. Miller Moss throws 2 balls, and it's supposed to be people want PI, right? Mekhi Lemon, my guy, I'm going to get on him because that's my guy. I love him to death. He's still going to be my number 1 receiver. I think he's great. He stopped because he thought it was PI.
Yeah.
You're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. Bad coaching. That's not Mekhi Lemon's fault.
Yeah, no, that was a great point, Coach, because he stopped on the release because he thought it was PI. And then what happened there was because you stop and then you re-release and the ball is behind you, the ball looks uncatchable. And I think that's what happened there because the ball looked uncatchable on that slow release. And then to your point, Coach, with Lane, and I'll give it back to you. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, you're good.
It was on that comeback. It was the same thing that happened against Minnesota last week. He didn't establish a target, and he didn't come back to the ball and establish a target. He didn't clear with his hips. He didn't create sort of a wide catch radius. He just got engulfed by the guy. And so you're not going to sort of penalize a guy for playing physical if the other guy is not holding his own. You're not going to reward tentativeness. That was a very tentative route that my guy, Jacoby Lane, ran. But you're not going to sort of reward that and get bailed out. So I completely agree with you. I was very happy, actually, that those calls were not made because we have to play through this. We have to find a way to sort of overcome this. It's no secret now. I mean, this is 3 or 4 weeks. We've been playing Big Ten games. They're going to call it loose. I mean, we know that. And they're calling it loose both ways. And so you got to sort of be able to adjust accordingly, Coach. I think that's a phenomenal point.
Yeah, and it happened twice when the game was on the line. And then let's talk about the overtime. The first play, you take a shot. You have no clock against you. The only clock you have against you is the play clock. So you have either 25 or 45 seconds to get the play off. You have no clock against you. You're on the 25. You have a chance to get a first down. And then if you get a first down, you're on the 15, you also have a chance to get another first down. Why are you taking a shot and trying to score on the first play? Use the game plan that was working. Get Woody working. Get him a screen.
Right.
You can give him a shovel pad. You can do all. You say you're going to run backside tackle counter, leave the guy unblocked, and you got a double-edged pressure coming off. You got a double-edged pressure coming off the edge. And then all of a sudden, Woody gets tackled in the backfield, and they're quick to say, oh, there goes the offensive line again. No, the offensive lineman was pulling and go block the side of the play. It was a bad call at that wrong time. You could have gave Woody the ball a bunch of times, reestablished the first down. All right, you only get to the 15, reestablish another first down. You don't have to rush and score. Like, come on, guys.
Well, Coach,
by the way, I know Oregon. Hold on real quick,
man.
I know Oregon won yesterday, guy. I got a bunch of text messages last night from my brother. I know Oregon won. I'm gonna hear it. And this weekend it's my little kid's birthday, and my brother will be here, so I'm gonna hear it all week.
Oh,
so
man. I think Kenny gets this one, Coach. I think
Kenny's gonna get this season.
I think Kenny has won the battle. The question is who's still gonna win the war, but I think Kenny has won this battle, Coach. It's a great point. Look, what's a word that we've used the last few weeks with Lincoln is let's hope he doesn't get spooked, right? We've talked a lot about that, about kind of abandoning the run game in kind of critical moments and whatnot. Let's hope he doesn't get spooked. I think what happened, Coach, on that first that sequence in overtime is he got a little spooked because he felt like he needed to get it all. Because at that point, Coach, again, offensively, we sort of look up and say, oh, we scored 30. That should have been enough to win. But look at the circumstances under which they got the 30. There was 2 picks on the plus side of the field that they did nothing with, kicked 2 field goals. And then we talked about, it was literally just misdirection in the first half. It wasn't like they were methodically moving the ball down the field. The only time they methodically moved down the field, Coach, the entire game was that last drive, to make it 30-23. That was the best drive of that game by far. Gave it to Woody. And then obviously Deuce came up with a huge play there on 3rd and 6. I mean, that was the key play. Outside of that, they couldn't move the ball methodically at all. And I don't know if Lincoln felt like, and even that play, Moss did a phenomenal job kind of stepping up because the edge pressure was there. He stepped up and then found Deuce in the corner, down the sideline. I think Lincoln panicked. I don't think Lincoln had the confidence that we could just sort of methodically move it 25 yards because the evidence to that point didn't suggest it. And he took that shot, and now you're forced to run, right? It's an obvious running down. You're not going to come and throw 3 times in overtime. 2nd and 10, they were sitting on it. And then at 3rd and 13, I mean, you're kind of just hosed there. I think the interesting question there is on 3rd and 13, was there something, obviously you got to be aggressive, but was there something there on 3rd and 13 where you could have at least made the field goal a little bit easier? Where because you're sitting at the 28, it's a 45-yarder, even though the kicker was having a really good game, Coach. In this circumstance, 45 yards is still a tough kick in college, right? I mean, especially with the game on the line. Was there something on 3rd and 13 you could have done underneath for 6 or 7 to at least kind of make it a little bit more manageable and see what you could do? But that's, Monday morning armchair quarterback stuff. But I think it was a lack of confidence, Coach, of being able to move the ball methodically down the field. And that's why I think he took a shot.
Well, and so here's things that question me about Lincoln Riley's decision making. Freezing the kicker is not that hard. And the key to freezing the kicker is you call the timeout when the kicker takes his deep breath.
Right.
So you let him get all set up.
Yeah.
You let the holder get set up. When the kicker's in line, he takes a deep breath, and right before he tells him, go ahead and snap it, you call the timeout. Lincoln Riley called the timeout before they were even
real early.
Up.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing? You get what I'm saying? Like, and he's like, oh, I froze him. You didn't freeze him. Like, you didn't even give him a chance. Like, all right, I'm locked in, and then throwing it off. Like that like those things, those are little things that really, really matter.
Yep.
That I don't think from a micro standpoint that people understand. You know what I mean? On a macro level, you have to understand it, but I don't think the big picture understands it. Like, we didn't even freeze him right. You get what I'm saying? Like, we didn't even freeze him right. There's so many things that are in question. Like, and Madman, I'm just gonna say, like, it's time for a change. In your situation, you're putting him on a PIP. You're like, here's what you need to change.
Yep.
You need to change these.
Performance improvement plan. Exactly. Yep.
You need to change these. I'm done. I put him on a PIP, and I'm over with it. I don't know. I don't see any improvement. We've been seeing the same thing for 3 years. I don't see any change coming. And now the thing, you know what the tipping point for me was? The tipping point for me was, we're just one play away. We're just one play away. That is the worst negative self-talk you can ever give yourself because you're delusional.
Absolutely. It's delusional optimism. It's absolutely irresponsible. It's borderline unethical when you're delusionally optimistic. I said the same thing, Coach. This was 2 plays away, 3 plays away. You sort of hypnotize yourself into thinking that you're making progress when you're not. My counter to that, and I said it earlier, is just go back. And let's just apply that same logic, but the other way. I mean, this guy's, he's 11-10 in his last 21 games, 22-11 overall. He's 4 plays away from being 18-15, Coach. Okay, if Wisconsin guy doesn't fumble, Nussmeier makes the right read, DTR doesn't throw the pick 2 years ago, and the Oregon State guy, doesn't throw the pick on the last drive, he's 18-15 as USC coach at $10 million a year. He's 4 plays away from being 18-15. So we can play that game both ways. So he's got to stop with this 2 plays away and 3 plays away and all this nonsense. The bottom line is we wilted down the stretch of these games. And I think it's going to be really fascinating, Coach. I'm going to stay true to my sort of 4-year term because I believe that if you cannot turn a program around in 4 years and make them a legitimate college football playoff contender, you're either not an elite coach, you're not at an elite program, or both. And I think that, but this now starts here. And I think it's going to be fascinating, Coach, to see Lincoln Riley in this situation. Let's not forget, for all the flaws of that 2022 team, they started 6-0. So the conversation was, well, how good are they really? They're 6-0, but how good are they? Where is this season going to go? Where are they potentially going to get exposed? But there was still so much to play for because they were 6-0. Let's not forget, last year's team was 6-0. And same situation. Oh, my God, Grinch hasn't improved at all. How is this happening? We're just skimming by. Remember, we got to 6-0 after beating Arizona on the 2-point conversion in overtime. All that conversation. When is this team going to get exposed? If they are, how badly are they going to get exposed? Are they going to free fall? Are they really that good? But you still had relevant football. You had sort of a lot of pressure and expectation that went into it. This is now the first year, Coach. Lincoln Riley has gone from 6-0 in 22, 6-0 in 23. Now he's 3-3 in 24. This season is over. And so now how is he going to coach this season? Because for as flawed as you were the first 2 years, you were still in it. And the games mattered. Now the games don't matter. I forget about the recruiting and all of that stuff. These recruits do not care whether you finish 10-3 or 8-5 or, you're either a true contender or you're not for that top level of recruit. They're not going to sort of say, oh, if they had won 9 games, I was going to go there, but they only won 8, so I'm not going to go there. That's a bunch of hogwash to me, in my opinion, Coach. This is now a glorified preseason moving forward. How does Lincoln Riley coach? What is the level of attention to detail? What is the level of engagement? What is the level of professionalism? How much are they going to want to care? Because historically, Coach, we have seen this since 2008 and even sometimes in the Pete days. When there was a game that didn't kind of matter, we were checked out. And that's definitely been the case the last 15 years. So how much are they going to give themselves now in these final 6 games, particularly with all of the distractions now that comes with NIL and the portal and thinking about draft stock and thinking about preserving your body and not getting injured in a meaningless game? He's going to have to deal with all of that. So that's a test as well to see how he responds here moving forward. And now, Coach, we get into 2025. This is the make it or break it year. I've always said this. This is the window of opportunity. You know what next year is, Coach? It's the 20-year anniversary of Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush being USC Trojans next year. Can you believe that? It's 20 years since Leinart and Bush. We cannot keep living off of the past. At some point, if we let this thing go next year and have another subpar season, where does this go now? You keep talking about the blue blood, and I'm saying you as in kind of the collective us. We keep talking about the blue blood. You cannot be a blue blood and be dormant for 15 or 20 years of just mediocre football. It has to come back. And that's why next year is so critical in terms of this window of opportunity. So everything we're going to be talking about now, Coach, whether it's, cooking or comedy or, pick your genre, is all going to be with an eye towards 2025. And that's a make it or break it year for Lincoln Riley. He's coaching for his legacy next year, Coach, because, the narrative is getting louder now that Bob Stoops just set Lincoln Riley up for immense success at Oklahoma. And the moment he's had to build his own program and his own team, they've struggled. He's an incredible quarterbacks coach. He's an incredible offensive mind. But is he a full-on head coach? Have we just overpaid a head coach's salary for just an offensive coordinator? That is the question. And now 2025 is just an absolutely critical year for USC football. It's been 20 years since Leinart and Bush. We've just been living off of the 03 to 05 days, and we need something else because 20 years is a generation. And I hate to say it, Coach, but if you add up the last 19 years or so after Leinart and Bush, and this is going to pain you a little bit, Oregon's more successful than USC the last 19 years. I mean, I'm talking even about the second half of the Carroll era, right? I mean, when you talk about, you add the 3 Rose Bowls, even 06, 07, 08, you add up what Oregon has done, 1 Heisman each, all of that stuff. They're more successful than we've been the last 19 years. So
they still don't have any national championships.
They don't, but neither do we in the last 19 years. But like, that's the thing. I got you, but we can't keep living off of the past. And so,
hey man, he might be watching. Don't say that. He might be watching. He's
I know, but Lincoln's coaching for his legacy next year, Coach, and USC's kind of coaching to make sure next year is just so critical for this window of opportunity. So we're in it now. The calendar, Coach, may say October, 13th or 2024. But from a USC football perspective, in a mindset, a mentality, a philosophy, we're already in 2025. This is all just prep for 25.
All right, so yeah, that's where I said all. I had to get it all out yesterday. That's why I went yesterday.
Absolutely,
I
I'm
had
so
to
glad
get it
you
all
did.
out. Yeah. What do you want to do? Do you want to wrap it up, or you want to take some calls or some comments real quick
Yeah, we
before
can
we
take
wrap
some
it up?
comments. Why not?
All right, take some comments. I saw some good ones here. I saw one at the very beginning, and it was towards you, so you might even know who this is. But here you go. It says, "Hey Jamal, old friend from USC program. How many late interceptions do we need until we start to question Miller Boss' ability to close the game?"
Oh man, I can't decode who the friend is from Gixxer Squid, but great to. Oh, it's always great to engage with old SC friends, and it's
You know
so
who it is?
special. I
You
don't,
know who
I
it is?
don't, I can't, I
Oh.
can't decode it from just the username. So maybe we can DM each other offline and reconnect. Would love that. Nothing more. Look, in terms of the late INTs, you're sort of referring to the ball there on the 50. I mean, that was more Moss needing to force the ball deeper. And here's what I'll say. That was a total function of Lincoln Riley's lack of clock management, because with 14 seconds left, even if you had sort of an underneath ball there, you're going to run out of time. You weren't in field goal range. So he had to sort of push the ball down the field in that particular situation. Now, I grant you, it was inaccurate. He was sort of high with Robinson, but he had to sort of go there. He had to throw the ball in traffic because of the lack of clock management with Lincoln Riley. If that's 34 seconds, 38 seconds, he's making a different throw. And I will say, I think Moss, again, I thought played pretty well. He made some really nice throws. And we talked ad nauseum about the Minnesota game. That was a knuckleball interception off of the lack of edge production there. That was the interception. And then again, at the end of the game, he had to force the ball down the field. It was only 15 seconds to go in Minnesota. So he's been put in these situations where not only does he know, but the defense knows that you got to push the ball down the field. And it's much easier to get interceptions when you know that. Like, think of it, this is an extreme case, but think of it when Hail Mary happen, right? How many interceptions happen off of a Hail Mary? Because the guy's got to go deep. And so that's really what's happening with Moss. I still believe gives this team the best chance to win. I know people are kind of calling for Moss's head. I don't get that at all. This is more of a function of a lack of balance right now offensively, because of line play and because of the lack of emergence of a wide receiver one. So now, having said that, if you go another couple of games and you're sort of wobbling, 3-3 kind of becomes 4-4. And then you, again, like we talked about, that this now becomes a roadmap to 2025. You probably want to play Maeva at the end of the season, just for not necessarily that Maeva is better than Moss or Maeva gives you a better chance to win. But when you're thinking about the future of your program, it would be better to have Maeva have the reps when he's battling Juju Lewis for the job next year. So that's what I'll say. I still have total faith in Miller Moss. I think Miller Moss has done a really stellar job at quarterback this year. He's just been put in some really difficult predicaments because of offensive line, because of Lincoln's lack of game management, and because of, truth be told, we expected a lot more from Zach Branch as wide receiver one, and hasn't played out.
Yeah, and people are going to be shocked when how high Miller Moss gets drafted. I'm going to say, as I told you so. Coach, why with Riley coach teams is a margin for error so small? I think so. I'm a big believer in this. I'm a big believer in sports psychology and sports physiology. And I believe that psychologically he does not have his guys in the right place because, like we said, one play away. And the best example I could give you is the Padres. Oh, we're 1 year away. We're 1 year away. The Padres been 1 year away ever since they got Manny Machado. They still haven't accomplished the goal yet, right? We could say the same thing with the Dodgers. We'll see what happens this year. That's neither here nor there. I don't think Lincoln Riley is mentally and physically putting them in the right situation to win football games. That he always has an excuse. And when you tell a player that we're only one play away, they're fighting to find that one play. But when you really break down the game, it's more than one play. It's like 10 plays where they completely blew the game yesterday, right? We could talk about the field goal. We could talk about the blown, I don't know if it's blown coverages, but people wide open. We could talk about the fact the whole season they gave guys who have not been national superstars the best game of their lives. There's so much more, but when you're searching for that one play as a player, you're trying to find it during the game, and that one play becomes 30 plays. And then I think physiologically, I just don't think he's putting them in the right position. I still disagree with the travel. Penn State left on Thursday, right? I just don't agree with the travel. I don't agree what he's doing. They were so out of shape yesterday. I was looking at Kamari Ramsey. He was out of breath. And you're in game 6, and you're still not in shape. There's some stuff that's going on wrong. So when you're dominant, you have all those things covered, right? When we was with Pete, Tell the Truth Monday, and he told us the truth. We sucked. We need to get better if we want to accomplish the goal. All right, Pete, let's go get better. Not, oh, you're almost there, blah, blah, blah. Nope, you lost this game because of this. This is why you lost. Let's move forward. I don't think they're getting that from Lincoln Riley.
No, I think it's a great point, Coach. I won't add too much more to what you said because I think it was very holistic. The only element I'd add there is if you go back and look at Lincoln Riley, particularly at USC these last 2.5 years, he calls the game different with the lead. It just he gets more conservative.
Yes.
He gets way more sort of conventional. He doesn't get his playmakers the ball, so that lends itself to close games. I mean, think about last night again. We talked about this. 3 opportunities in the first half. USC had to make it a 3-score game, and they went 0 for 3. That as much as anything else that happened in the second half or in overtime was the greatest determinant of this loss. And so when you go back and look at Lincoln Riley over the course of games, when we've had leads, he gets so conservative with sort of a 2-score lead. It's sort of baffling. He allows teams to get back in the game over the course of 4 quarters. And college football is such a game of momentum that third score just psychologically, Coach, to your point, changes things so differently. If you're still in a 2-score game, especially if you're one of these Big Ten teams, you can still have balance. You can still run the ball. Psychologically, though, when you're down 3 scores, the clock in your head is moving faster. The game is picking up. You can't just sort of methodically have balance and run the football. And that's sort of what happens. So everything that you said, Coach, but he's just a different play caller with the lead. And it's baffling as to why.
Yeah. Should Riley get out of the direct offensive play calling and coordinating and hiring someone as OC? I don't think he'd do that because he has too much pride. I'll just leave it at that. I think he has too much pride and he doesn't want to let that one go. What do you think, man?
Oh, I mean, it's a great question. At that point, if Riley's not an offensive coordinator, what is he? I mean, that's a message that basically says if Riley shouldn't be the offensive coordinator, he should get on LinkedIn, because indirectly you're basically saying he should be fired, because what we've said all along, over the course of his 7+ year tenure between Oklahoma and USC is he's a great offensive mind. He's a great, play caller. He's a great quarterback guru. Now, with all of these flaws, right, of not, coaching the same way with the lead and the game management, but his success as a quarterback whisperer has been significant. If you take the quarterback element out of Lincoln Riley, the questions have always been, can he coach a defense? Can he run a program? Does he care enough about the trenches? Does he have consistency? Does he have the mental aspect of the game? So if you're basically pulling the play calling from Lincoln Riley, you don't need any version of Lincoln Riley. And so the question for me would be, do you need him at all? That's how I actually read that question.
Yeah, there was one more that I wanted to talk to before we get out of here. Let me find it. Give me 1 second. It was about the facilities. It was saying we spent $310 million on facilities, and then we're spending $100 million on Lincoln Riley.
I mean, it's a great point, Coach. It's
I think I will tell you this much. Here it is right here. We're spending $310 million on new facilities and Lincoln contracts, all to lose. I will say this. The facilities are needed. They're way overdue. We're still practicing on the same practice field as O.J. Simpson, and it was the same style. Like, they deserve a new practice field. You know what I mean? Baseball deserves a new baseball field. Like, we deserve a state-of-the-art facility. It's not just for football. It's for majority of all the sports are getting new facilities. I think the student athletes deserve that experience. In my opinion, they deserve it. They don't deserve to be in an old facility, and then they deserve it. Like, don't take that away from student athletes. Now, the $100 million, I mean, I still believe you have to pay a premium to get a very good head coach, but at this point in time, we're not getting a very good ROI. And at this time, I think it's time to call our 7 billion-dollar donors, and it's time to start collecting for a check, and it's time to call the search firm. It's time to start looking for a new coach. That's what I think.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, Coach, and Colton, it's such a great question. And Coach, I agree with you. I think the question to sort of pose here is, would you rather, for the state of the football program, let's just talk football here in terms of kind of the jurisdiction of this question, would you rather take $310 million and put it into a new football center, or would you rather take $310 million, put it into a mutual fund or an index fund and collect 6 to 7% interest? And, and what that 6 to 7% interest does is, that's $18 to $20 million a year that then you can spend on NIL and get the best players. That's the question for me. So, and that's really a question in the 2020s. Look, if this was 10 years ago, facilities was all the rage. It was the thing that separated programs. Oh, I want to go there because my locker room is going to be so great. And I get all these great uniforms. I get all this swag. I get all this gear. I feel like that's not really that relevant anymore. I think if you told a kid, look, you're going to get $1 million a year and you're going to play in the parking lot, I think the kid's going to take it. I mean, I don't know if the football center element means as much anymore. But, Coach, I could be wrong. I didn't play. You did. So you would have the moral authority on that one. But it's an interesting question that Colton brings up, because if you put that $310 million into an investment fund and collect the interest and use that for NIL, you're probably going to attract better talent, my opinion, than you would with just sort of the shiny building that is a football center. And then obviously we've talked ad nauseum about the $100 million contract with Lincoln Riley. We're paying $100 million and we're getting $10 million results. I mean, look, just as a point of reference, Lincoln Riley's contract is $100 million, the totality of it. Deshaun Foster's contract across town is $10 million, the totality of that. Obviously, the different years and all of that. You're talking about a 10x difference. One team is 0-4 in the Big Ten. One team is 1-3 in the Big Ten. So you're literally paying $100 million for $10 million results. So clearly the ROI is not closing there.
Yeah. There was another one. This was a good one right here. I'll roll real quick. So I say the facilities because kids do care a little bit about facilities. It's a recruiting tool. When you come on campus, you have something to look at. And then when you start sending pictures amongst friends, like, oh, look what we got. Look what we got. It's a little comparison, but thinking about it from the coaches and athletic department side, I feel like the kids deserve something nice to work out in and have something,
Yeah.
We're honoring. That's all.
There's an interesting strategy there, Coach, and we're not a finance podcast in any way, shape, or form, but there's also kind of an interesting argument. Could you split the difference there?
Yes,
could you
you
put
can.
150 million into the facility and then create a very digestible debt structure to pay off the rest of the 150, and then take the remaining 150 in cash and put that in an index fund and use that for NIL.
You could definitely value engineer it, and because
so
$150 million is a good facility still. Yeah. All right, this is the last one, Jamal. We'll get out of here. What does We Are SC even mean anymore? We've been irrelevant for too long. That's a good one. I don't know. He has me dumbfounded. I don't know. You could always walk around because we always been there and we walk that campus and but at the end of the day, production wise, this is a production business. It's not very good. And We Are SC right now just means you're a mediocre program, and that needs to change quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question, Sports Geek. I think when you say We Are SC, there's an implication that we're just honoring history right now. We're honoring the past. And so when you say We Are SC, you're talking about all of the championships that have been won in the past, the 11 national championships, the 8 Heisman Trophy winners, the 25 Rose Bowl victories, all of the first round picks, the College Football Hall of Famers, the Pro Football Hall of Famers. But it's an ode to the past. We Are SC in terms of today and tomorrow right now doesn't mean very much because we haven't done anything today, and we haven't done anything today for the better part of 15 years. And this is where, Coach, we've talked about this in the offseason. We're getting to a point where we're questioning, was Pete Carroll the rule or was Pete Carroll the exception? Because when you look at the 15 to 20 years after Pete and you look at the 15 to 20 years before Pete, you take 81 to 02 and you look at 08 to 24, 25, you take those eras, those durations. Those are mediocre football teams. Yeah, they played in the Rose Bowl every 3 or 4 years. Never really threatened for a national championship. Never were really sort of nationally relevant. Always had kind of some star players that you were made aware of. But there was nothing dynastic about those eras. Coach, you and I have talked about growing up in LA in the 80s and 90s. I mean, USC football was very different in the 80s and 90s than it was with Pete. And so when you look at a holistic 40 years, and you're saying the 7 years that was Pete, over 40 years is what we're really hanging on to, and the other 33 years was largely mediocre, you have to wonder, was Pete the rule or was Pete the exception? And for us that's why the success next year is so imperative to kind of get back on another run, because you're saying that Pete was the rule, that every generation gets their Pete Carroll. The generation before was John McKay. The generation before that was Howard Jones. Every generation gets excellence in football, because if you can't get it going soon enough, we're just going to think of Pete as, hey, the sixth choice of head coach. Back then, when Mike Garrett was the athletic director, was simply just the exception and not the rule.
I happen to be in the right place. Emily, and we're going to end it on two things. One thing I'm going to end it on is, here's Miller Moss stats for the year, which is exceptionally well. And then another thing I'm ending on is Will Howard choked last night. So, I mean, I think we're in a good place. Man, we had a good one.
Good one.
Tomorrow, what do we talk about? Bring your favorite recipe.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, you bring your favorite recipe. I'll tell you how biryani is. My face looks like some chicken kubi day after getting skewered in the stadium sun yesterday, but we'll find a way to have some fun, my friend, for sure. Yeah, and we hope that the audience joins us. We're just kidding. Obviously, it's all about SC football, but look, we're going to have to take ourselves a little bit less seriously here from now until the end of the season, because these games just don't mean as much.
Yep, definitely. Man, I appreciate you, fans. I appreciate you. Oh, where do we go from here? We'll find out. Trojans lose 30-33. 3-3 on the year, 1-3 in the Big Ten. Got to keep moving forward. Got to figure it out. Appreciate you guys. You guys know how it goes. Live free. Fight on.